This is the Wild SMP, Minecraft's first 1.19 server that I recently joined. And this is a cow. Now, you may be wondering, Bagel, what the hell do these things have to do with one another? And the answer is simple. Wild doesn't have any cows. I mean, it does, but they're hard to come across. I've asked a few of the other members about this and no one has found any.
There's like no cows that spawn, or like anywhere in a 5,000 block radius.
Aww.
Cow! Yeah, there's literally no cows. I mean, I tried to make leather armor, but I just had to make it out of human flesh instead. I haven't seen any cows since the economy collapsed.
You'd think for a server that has frogs, copper golems, and even the warden, they'd have the basic farm animals, no? Well, cows had seemingly gone completely extinct. With that in mind, I decided I would do whatever it takes to bring cows back to the server. Mainly because I needed milk for a cake, but that's besides the point. The first thing I needed to do was explore. Cows tend to spawn in groups of 4, usually on grass blocks at a light level of 7 or higher. However, they won't spawn in snowy plains, meadows, or even wooded badlands. So I needed to avoid these areas at all costs. Luckily for me, none of these biomes were nearby, so I had nothing to worry about. I began by heading to the northwest of Spawn Town, where I built a boat and began my journey through the river. Everything was going fine, until I remembered that only 12.9% of my viewers are actually subscribed, and that subscribing is totally free and can always be undone later. The second issue being that the river was cut off at the end, which was no problem. I could simply get out of the boat and walk around the tiny patch of grass that blocked both bodies of water. That was until I heard it. And then from there, we bring back If you don't recognize those sounds, that's the sound of the warden. It had completely slipped my mind that I was traveling through Warden Lake, or at least that's what I like to call it. Basically, there's a warden underneath the water, and it has attempted to get me in the past, which has left me in total fear of ever going underground again. Now, for those of you who don't know, I don't have the usual fight or flight response that most people have. Instead, when faced with danger, I tend to stop and stare. And that's what I did, for 10 whole minutes. Which, now that I think about it, did more worse than it did good. If I were to make too much noise, the warden would hear me, and I was already wasting enough time loitering around the area. So eventually, after bargaining with the warden that most definitely had no idea what I was saying, listen, buddy, go away? I re-entered the water and continued on my journey. Not too long after, I spotted 2 cows near the shore out of the corner of my eye, and immediately made my way over. It wasn't until then that I realized I hadn't actually brought anything to lure them. So I quickly made a small wheat farm, then removed any mobs in the nearby area that would cause me any issues. I didn't want the cows to die while I was trying to escort them back to true spawn.
The woman was too stunned to speak.
I also realized that only one of them would fit inside the boat with me, which meant I would need to leave one behind for the time being. So I made some fences, noticed they were walking away, then constructed a tiny oak fenced pen for one of them to stay in, and breeded them, for whatever reason. With that, the first cow and I began making our way back home. It was easy until we made it back to Warden Lake. Once again, I froze up. My spirit animal is a squirrel, what can I say? But another issue arose. I didn't want to take the cow out of the boat, and there was a grass path blocking my way. And just my luck, a group of pillagers had begun patrolling the area. Now, I didn't feel like fighting them, because it would risk me getting bad omen. I was also scared that the sound of me breaking grass blocks would alert the warden, so I needed to be careful. After that, the journey was pretty easy. I managed to get it uphill despite my constant fear that it would fall back down, then constructed a tiny pen beside the sheep for it to stay in. And just like that, we had a cow! I celebrated a little, then I realized that I needed to do that again to bring the second cow home. And just like that, my journey continued once again. It was pretty easy. I just needed to go from A to B, then bring the second cow back the same way. I reached Warden Lake, and despite telling myself to keep my finger on the W key, I let go anyway. Why am I like this? Once I made it back, I remembered that before leaving I had bred the cows, so I had a choice to make. I could either A, do a third journey to bring the child back, B, leave the child and bring the parent back or vice versa, or C, my personal favorite, kill one of them. Either way, I had to choose which one I was bringing back. So like any sane person would, I did eeny meeny miny mo. Eeny meeny miny mo, catch a tiger by its toe, if it squeals, let it go, eeny meeny miny mo. Mo means no, out you go. Okay, you come with me. While I was bringing the second cow home, I realized that I only had one piece of wheat, and to breed cows I needed at least 2. Luckily enough, there was a house on the way home with a farm out front. All I needed to do was borrow a row of wheat and then replant it. Now, I didn't know this until recently, but that house was probably JJ's. And for those of you who don't know, JJ is one of the most stacked players on the server. At least he was until the end fight. Well, actually, to be honest, it was like a 5v1, so I give him props. And I would probably have been killed if I was found on his land without proper reasoning, especially if I was taking wheat without telling him. But once I had what I needed, I quickly got out of there. The second cow was much more of a pain to bring uphill than the last one, and I accidentally hit it before we even started. Eventually, after a whole minute of trying to get this cow uphill, we made it, and I placed it inside the pen alongside the other. I was so happy with myself, until I remembered that the hardest part of this was yet to come. I needed to breed them over and over and over again. I'm gonna feed you guys. Now, I'm not a very patient person, and breeding has a 5-minute cooldown every single time, not to mention an extra 20 minutes for the children to grow up. I quickly built a farm next to the pens just so I wouldn't have to head back to spawn town every time I needed wheat. And I began waiting. Waiting and waiting. I got a muffin. The baker. Yum. And waiting. And eventually, an hour or so later, the pen was full, which marked the completion of my first task on the server, and I could finally make my cake. Wait, I have other videos planned for this SMP, so if you want to stick around and eventually watch those, feel free to subscribe and like the video. I also stream this over on my Twitch. Alright, bye!